Welcome to the latest episode of Five on the Floor on the Five Reasons Sports Network. Thanks for joining us on your favorite podcast app, on Apple Podcasts, on Android, Spotify, or the Five Reasons YouTube channel. Also, make sure you subscribe to Off the Floor. That's our Discord server, $2.99 per month. Link right here in the description. This is the place for conversation and information on the Miami Heat. We call it the most heat anywhere. It's Off the Floor. If you click on the link in the description, you will bypass the Apple upcharge, pay the $2.99 a month. You can cancel at any time. Also, check out the great sponsors of the Five Reasons Sports Network. Includes Prize Picks. Use the code 5 FIVE. Put down $5. You get $50 to play right away. That's PrizePicks.com. Use the code 5 FIVE. You get $50 to play right away. Again, legal in the state of Florida. You can play across the sports spectrum. This is our daily fantasy partners. Again, check it out. Prize Picks. Use the code 5. And now, today's episode. All right, no song yet. We're still working on that. Today's floor plan. I'm Ethan Skolnick. You can follow me at Ethan J. Skolnick and the Five Reasons Sports. We got Eternal Bass. You can follow him at Eternal Bass on Blue Sky and on Twitter. Also, you can check him out on Playback. Go to playback.tv/5RSN. Watch the games with us. We're going to have a lot more content there as well beyond just basketball. Working on some things now, so check it out. That's Playback. And, of course, on Discord, which is Off the Floor. So today, as we are in the All-Star break, and as we are waiting today for Jaime Jaquez to play in the Rising Stars game, of course, this new format where the winner of the Rising Stars game, they end up appearing in the actual All-Star tournament. I don't really understand any of this. I don't really know why they're doing this. I don't know why they just can't do USA versus the world and just call it in that way, because I think that will motivate some guys to actually play hard. But this is what they're doing. But anyway, Jaime Jaquez is in the game. Ware is not in the game. You can make an argument that Ware should be and Jaquez shouldn't be based on their performances this year, but that's where we're at. But what Eternal and I are going to do at the break here is the Heat are leaning into a younger team, even though, of course, we saw a lot of Alec Burks and Kyle Anderson in the last game before the break, in part because the Heat were so shorthanded. They've now lost 4 straight. They're 3 games under 500. They have the 20th best record in the league. And I did an episode today, Eternal, on whether or not they should just try to kind of soft tank, which I know they're not going to do, but to try to keep another first round pick. But they are leaning into youth for the most part. That seems to be the direction of where they're going. They're trying to develop guys and compete at the same time, which is not the easiest thing to do, but they do have a leading scorer who's 25 years old. They've got a multi-time All-Star who is 27 years old, even though he's not playing in this game. So their core players are still young players, but we're going to talk about the other young players and kind of evaluate where they're at. So the guys that we're going to talk about today are Ware, Jaime Jaquez, Niko Jovic, and Pelle Larsson. I don't know that we can get a whole lot into Keshad Johnson because we haven't seen him a bunch. Josh Christopher's another one. Isaiah Stevens. These guys are in the pipeline and are available to play for them. And additionally, Drew Smith, who's a little bit of an older sort of developing player, but he gave them some minutes earlier this season that were pretty good before tearing his Achilles. Eternal, who do you want to start with?
I think we could start with Pelle Larsson.
Okay. I'm going to go through the numbers, and then we're going to talk about kind of what we've seen. So far, Pelle has actually played in 36 games. Averaged 12 minutes, 12.6 minutes in those games. He's had one start. He's averaging 3.8 points, 1.5 rebounds, 0.9 assists, 0.4 steals, 0.4 turnovers, 1.7 fouls, which actually I do think is significant because we're going to talk about him on the defensive end a little bit. He's shooting 45% overall, 34% from 3. Of course, this is the Heat's second round pick this year out of Arizona. What have you liked? What needs to improve?
I think I like his defensive tenacity. You can definitely tell he loves to get out of it. We saw it, me, Matt, Adele, and some others. We saw it in the summer league, just how defensively sound he is, and just how active he is on that end. He is also somebody who's not scared of contact. He's willing to go in there and create some contact on the offensive end, trying to get to the rim. And obviously how he looked in summer league was going to look a little bit different with the main team, as your roles are just different. But he's been up and down with his shot as far as from 3. But he's a hustle player, and those are the things that you just can't teach. especially as we get deeper into this list of younger guys. But he just has everything that you would want in a young guy, as far as a role player, outside of just pure shooting. But I think he's done pretty well as far as what he's been given to do.
Well, I think you've hit on it. I think what we're seeing is the development of a role player, and whether or not he can be more down the line, we will see. We talked about him as kind of a plug and play guy, and that his minutes would depend in part on whether or not he makes open shots. Now, he hasn't had a lot of open shots so far.
Mhm.
I go through the numbers. The volume has not been great. I mean, he's averaged 1.5 threes in terms of his attempts per 12.6 minutes that he's played. So, I mean, he's getting up a few. He's shooting, as I said, 34% from three. He's averaging a little under three shots overall. So he's not getting heavy volume of shot attempts. The things that I've liked, and you mentioned it, it's mostly disposition that I like about him. And that's on both ends. And it kind of came across I remember the first game that he got heavy minutes guarding DeMar DeRozan, and he was complaining after the game about DeRozan's whistle, which is not something that you hear a young guy kind of step up and speak out about. Like, he is not, you mentioned it, he's not afraid of anybody. He has that kind of heat mentality in that regard that they want. I do think his defense has been a little better than advertised, but then we saw that early on, and I think that's kind of carried over. Offensively, I'm just curious what the role is going to be, because again, this is a different team that they're constructing. We talked about maybe he would take, Brady and I talked a lot about maybe he would end up taking some of Jaquez's minutes when Jimmy was still here. Now Jaquez is still here and Larsson is here, and I'm just curious to see what they carve out for Larsson. You can make a case that even though Burks has been effective this year and I think should have played more, that we are getting to the point where you just want to see the young guys play, and that maybe Larsson ends up getting some of those minutes in the backcourt. And we've talked about him maybe getting some of the minutes that Terry Rozier has played. Before we move on to Jovic, who's going to be the next one we talk about, do you do you think that playing Larsson more this season would lead to more winning?
I don't think so. If I'm being honest, I don't think so. I definitely think he could contribute, right? But I think it's such a alchemist kind of thing, right? Where it's just kind of a formula thing within a game flow, right? Like I don't think he is going to be the player that gets you closer to a win every single game, just because that's just too much to ask of a rookie of his role. It's a little different with Khalil as we get to Khalil, but it's a little bit much to ask of a rookie of his role, especially with the guard room being so crowded. I think Alec Burks does give you a lot more as far as winning goes, but even with him, that's a it's a formula thing as well. Excuse me, but I think Pella definitely these moments now are going to pay dividends for you next season.
When I look at the on off numbers, you can make a case he should be playing over Rozier. That's the one,
Oh yeah,
because
that's
the
that's unquestionable.
right, and any of the guards, honestly, you can make that case. And now that Rozier's contract is going to be expiring, after this season, well, expires next season, but it's going to be an expiring contract next season, and you're past the trade deadline. I do think you can make a compelling case for Larsson to get some of his minutes, because it's not like Rozier is handling a lot to sort of set up the offense. He's just handling to handle and to get off his own shot. Whereas I feel like as a connector, Larson, that's something that Larson can step into. He reminds me in some ways of in terms of sort of his physicality and his toughness, a little bit of a Dan Marley type, not the shooter that Dan was, but in terms of just physical play and sort of moving the ball, facilitating, that kind of thing. I do think they can draw more out of him. But I think you're right. I think most of this is probably going to be next season. You know what? I mentioned we were going to go to Niko, but I actually want to do Niko and Ware on the other side. So let's get to Jaquez, who's playing in the
Okay.
Rising Stars game, and let's get to Jaime's numbers this year, and look at them in comparison to last year, which is because I want to just put this into some kind of context here. All right, so last year Jaime played 75 games, started 20, averaged 28 minutes. He averaged 11.9 points, little under 4 rebounds, 2.6 assists, He shot 49% from the floor, which included 32% from three, but that meant 56% from two. Stepped right in, was fourth in Rookie of the Year voting, ninth and sixth Man of the Year voting. This year, he's played 46 games. So he's been, even if we've talked about injuries, he's been reasonably durable again. Has missed time because of some stomach ailments, things
I don't
along
know
those
if he should
lines.
have
But
played that minute, but
yeah, he's played 46. He started 11,
Mhm.
but his minutes have gone down. His minutes have gone from an average of 28 down to 23. His shot attempts have gone down kind of in a commensurate manner from 9.3 to 7.6. His shooting percentage has gone down from 49% to 44. That includes a drop of 32 to 29 from three, but more significantly, a drop from 56% to 49% from two. Rebounds are a tick up, actually, and pretty decently up per minute. Everything else is about the same except points, down to 9.2 from 11.9. Now, if you look at his per 36, if you want to match it up, he's actually averaging about the same in points, down from 15.1 to 14.4. This is mostly an efficiency and usage thing that are down from his
Mhm.
rookie season. He hasn't gotten quite as many starts as he got last year in that basis. And so even with Jimmy situation, there were times Jaime wasn't available when Jimmy wasn't available for one reason or another. People are down on Jaime. The numbers don't suggest that he's dropped off a cliff. They do suggest that he's dropped off, but the eye test
Oh,
to
the eye
me
test.
and to
Yeah,
others suggests he's dropped off more than that.
yeah.
How much, in your view, has he dropped off from last season?
I think. I mean, I've been saying this honestly. What, since the first game, right? Like how he looked in. Like I mean, if people remember, he was hurt coming out of training camp. He had the groin injury. He was hurt coming out of training camp, and it just looked like how he looked in summer league and how he looked um, after finally playing. He just looked totally different. If literally, I encourage all of you to go watch Jaime from his rookie season, and then go watch a game of his from this season. He physically looks totally different. We were watching the game the other night against the Thunder, and he just looked like he was a 35-year-old player going to work in the post. It just looked so. It took a lot of work for him to get those post moves off, and that's just not how it looked for him in his rookie season, where it looked a lot more fluid. And it seems to me that he may be dealing with something. I know the sickness, for whatever reason. I won't get into anybody's medicals, but he just doesn't look right. And I hope he does get some rest coming out of this, All-Star break, just like the rest of the team, physical and mental rest, and see how he looks afterwards.
See, I think it's more than that. I know this is one where you and I have strayed a little from each other's views. I, I, it's hard for me to cite the physical stuff at this point. Like I understood last year coming back from the groin injury, and that there was going to be struggles from that. And obviously, that's not an injury you want to mess with. He didn't want to push himself too much. But what I see is a player who's been figured out. That's my concern. And that doesn't mean he can't figure it out back, okay, that he can't adjust to the adjustments. But
Mhm.
we saw last year, like his nature was to attack, right? But it was also attack into this spin move towards the center. Teams really didn't know how to handle it. It was like a whirling dervish, right? Like, and and we joked on playback and on the pod about how, he was in transition. He had one speed, just like straight ahead. That's it. There's no adjustments or anything like that. Now it feels that way in the half court too. And I don't know if it's because he got scouted in a certain way. We started to pick up about halfway through last season, even before the groin injury, that teams were not giving him the middle on those spins anymore. And so he was just kind of spinning to nowhere. And I think for Jaime, and then he talked after the season, he's like, okay, what does he want to improve on? And he said, become a knockdown shooter and a lockdown defender. He's not going to be a lockdown defender. I think he can be a better defender than people thought he would be when he came into the pros. I think he can be adequate on that end. A knockdown shooter, though, like teams are leaving him open with that corner three. He's not making them. But
Mhm.
to me, the difference between this year and last year is not necessarily that. It's that he got in the paint and made plays consistently. Cuts, all that. Now, some of the in and out of players this year probably hasn't helped this, but that happened last year too. To me, Eternal, he needs a second act. Like he needs to get in the lab this summer and figure out it's not just about knockdown shooter because they can find one of those. Like if you're looking for a knockdown shooter, a 3-and-D type, but he seemed to me like he had more upside as a scorer. I'm not seeing that this year. I mean, am I missing it?
Here's something I'll push back on that too. As far as my initial claim of go watch him from his rookie season, you were seeing post up fadeaways as well. Like you were seeing intentional drive moves to get to the mid range shot. Like you could probably count on like 3 hands how many times you didn't see Jaime take a mid range jumper this season, if that much. Especially, one of the significant ones that you remember is the one that he had against LeBron. Again, just a fluid motion, caught it, turned around, left shoulder, splash. We haven't seen any of that. And also, too, just going from what he was doing his rookie season, even after the All-Star break, you saw that dwindle down as well. Now, you go look at the Summer League games, and you can kind of see what he was working on and how, again, he looked. And I guess some people are going to say, like, the talent disparity is different. The defense that he's seeing is different. Look, there's a difference from what you are going to do physically and what the defense allows you to do. How he is moving physically looks night and day differently. And I won't push back on you as far as teams have figured him out. Defenses will only give you so much and make you have to adjust. And it just doesn't seem like he has it right now to do that, even with the things that he was doing last year. So when you take all of that into account, if you're not doing what you were doing before, you don't physically have it, doesn't seem like you physically have it to do more than that. Yeah, I think this sophomore slump makes a lot of sense.
Well, we'll see if he gets it back after the break because I do think that as you look at their tradable pieces going forward,
Mm-hmm.
you can make a case that another team can look at him as a plug and play guy. You can bring off the bench, give you some scoring, and that the Heat would be willing to part with that essentially to get someone else. On the other side of this, we're going to talk about 2 guys who I think may be a little bit more difficult for the Heat to part with as we go forward. Do want to mention a great sponsor, the 5 Reasons Sports Network, though, our friends over at Water Cleanup. You can find them at WCUFL.com. That's WCUFL.com. Michael, Robert, their team, they'll take care of you from beginning to end. If you have a leak in your office, in your place of business, in your home, wherever, reach out to them right away. It's better actually to get the preventative maintenance before any of that happens. But once it happens, they'll do the leak detection, they'll do the damage assessment, and they'll handle everything so that you can handle it with your insurance company or whatever other party you need to deal with. So check them out. It's Water Cleanup of Florida, based in Boca Raton, service the entire Tri-County area. Got more than 100 5-star reviews on Google. Just good people. If they can't handle your situation, they will let you know. It's hard to find honest contractors. We talk all the time about water cleanup of Florida. So you know the slogan at this point. Again, it's WCUFL.com. If you've got the schmutz,
They got the
they
good.
got. I'm going to let you do it again. You ready? Because I haven't had Greg on for this for a while. If you've got the schmutz,
they got the goods.
All right, there we go. Back here with Eternal Bass, we got 2 more players to get to, and these are the 2 that you like talking about the most. So let's get to it. Niko Jovic.
Mm-hmm.
And here's where I'm at. I think people know I like Niko's talent a lot. Okay. And I like Niko's disposition a lot too. And I like the way that he's overcome some things. And last year he was very frustrated around this time that he was going back and forth to the G League. He was playing the 5 in the G League, which he didn't want to play. He kind of got misquoted by a reporter in his own language. Had to clean all of that up. Jimmy
No, no,
Butler took an
no, no,
interest
no, no,
in it.
no, no, no. Go ahead and say it. It was your fault. It was your fault.
No, it was not my fault.
It was your
It was
fault.
not my. It was
It
not
was
my
your.
fault. No, no,
He said it was your fault.
I was with him in Brooklyn, but the quotes that were taken out of context was nothing they
Nah,
gave me.
you said you got
Was
Niko hyped up
well, I
before that
did. I
happened.
did get him. I did get him hyped up, but it was actually a reporter and then that reporter claimed that his stuff was pulled out of context too. But it was a reporter who came in after the game who talked to Niko in Brooklyn after he didn't play. See, I just hyped him about whether he would play, and then he didn't. He played at the very tail end that night. If you remember, Caleb Martin came back and was they had a lot of guys out. Bam was out that night in Brooklyn, and Niko got into a little trouble. I'm not gonna claim credit for the trouble he got in, but maybe I hyped him up a little bit. But he came back and he was a starter at the end of the season, and then he started this season as a starter, but that didn't last very long. And I kind of felt like he got scapegoated a little bit for the way the rest of the lineup didn't work. Let's get to the numbers, though. Okay, throw out his first season. That was a redshirt year. Right. Last season at age 20, played 46 games, started 38. Again, almost all of them towards the tail end of the season. Averaged 20 minutes. 7.7 points, 4 rebounds, a couple of assists, 1 turnover. Shot 45% from the floor, 40% from 3 on 3.5 attempts. This year, he's played 44 games. So actually, it's almost the same as he played all of last season. Okay, so we can compare this. He's only started 10 of them. They came early in the season. He's averaging 11 points in 25 minutes. So his minutes have gone from 20 to 25. His points have gone from 8 to 11. That's about the right adjustment. He's averaging 4 rebounds, so his rebounds are actually down per minute. 2.9 assists, so they're up a little bit per minute. Turnovers are up a little bit per minute. The shooting is the same overall, 45 to 45. From 3, he's gone from 40% down to 37, which is still respectable. He's shooting a higher percentage from 2 than he did last season. Would you say he's played better or worse than he did last year?
I would say in some spurts he has, right? In some spurts he has. I think Niko, especially coming off the summer when he got injured right before the Olympics and wasn't able to really get a full training camp with the Serbian team, wasn't able to contribute the way he and maybe the coaching staff thought that he would. And then coming into the training camp, he, again, didn't have the blast off that he was looking for. But he had earned the starting spot. Now that last game in Memphis stood out to me significantly, especially with the rest of the starting lineup not being there. After the game, Spo liked what he did, but Spo was harping on his rebounding. He was harping on that rebound. I don't know if we tweeted it out from my videos that what I did, but Spo was just like the rebounding was unacceptable, basically, just paraphrasing. But you can kind of tell from the sense of Spo himself and some of the other members on the coaching staff that there was a plan for Niko to be more involved this season with more ball handler responsibilities and kind of running some actions through him. Obviously, that didn't start off the way that they wanted to. If you remember, Ethan, I know you pointed this out. When they went from Niko to Kevin Love, that was a clear message being sent. Like, this is what we need you to do as far as rebounding and other things like that. Obviously, there was the Terry mess, the Jimmy mess, and all the other stuff. But I do think at times Niko has shown, he had a solid 10, 15 game stretch where he was averaging 12 plus points, if not more, and do a little bit more ball handling, which is around the time the whole Jimmy suspensions were going on. Now, these last, I think 4 or 5 games, probably a little bit more. His shooting has been really inconsistent all season. Even though he's shooting 37% from 3, his shooting has been inconsistent. One of the things I've noticed about Niko this season is he has fire, but when things are starting to bother him, it affects his play. Like when he's not getting the whistle that he thinks he should be getting on the offensive end, which I will, to his credit, give him some credit. I see some people say he's soft. I don't really see that. He drives to the rim, gets fouled, doesn't get the foul, and now he's complaining with the ref. Now that thing, he has to stop. That's not gonna get you. That's not gonna get you fouls. You're right. You have to utilize the size that you have. Be way more aggressive in attacking rebounds. I think refs will reward that and then have that locked into their mind that you are that type of player, hustling and things like that. One of the things that was different about Jimmy versus everybody else when it came to fouls, Ethan, was that you knew Jimmy got fouled. You just couldn't deny it. And I think that's something not only the young guys, but everybody else on the team can pick up from Jimmy era past, is that make the ref have to call the foul. And I think
Mhm.
the next evolution for Niko is not losing the fire, right? Regardless of whatever happens on the court, not losing the fire if things don't go your way. You have to continue to affect the game. And I think that's just the other part of growing for him. And also, too, I had talked to him before about his ball handling and if he was still working on his guard skills, the thing he was doing
Mhm.
before getting drafted. And he said, he was still working with Karan and some others, but he was just mostly focused on trying to do whatever the team needed him to do. But if he wants to be the point forward, the point guard, or whatever he wants to be, he's going to have to tighten up those handles. He's going to have to tighten it up because he's lost the ball a couple of times during those opportunities, especially during press. Sometimes either you see him be comfortable with the handling, and then sometimes you see him get off mark. And I think that's the other part of growing for him.
Yeah, I think the thing with Niko is we see the flashes, but he is still wildly inconsistent, and
Oh
and I think that he's wildly inconsistent in part for reasons beyond his control. I think he's wildly inconsistent because the role has not been consistent for him, and we've talked about it. And he is better. I don't think they disagree on this. Brady's talked about it. Alex has talked about it. You've talked about it. I've talked about it. I talked to people inside the Heat. They talk about he's better with the ball in his hands.
yeah, oh yeah, they
Um,
say that. Yeah.
and we know it. But the thing is, they have not been able to. It's like it's funny. They'll get to a lineup that features him in that way, and then get away from it. The starting lineup was never going to be that. When they were leaning into Hero and Rozier at the start of the year, and Jimmy was frustrated with his role, and you still had to get Bam the early touches, Niko was just going to be a spot up shooter. That role was never going to suit him. But then you brought him off the bench, and you're like, okay, now this is looking like, okay, you can put the ball in his hands here with certain combinations. And then you saw the connection that he has with Ware, which was from the very beginning,
Mm-hmm.
the way they play together. But then Ware got put in the starting lineup. So now Niko's the one again adjusting to who he's coming off the bench with, who he's playing with. And he talked about how it's easier to play with Ware because he just knows where he's going to be. Bam, Ware's vertical space are going to be above the rim. We know Ware has the potential. We'll talk about him in a second. We know he has the potential, obviously, to step out, but where he is most valuable to them is as a lob threat right now. Niko throws a good lob most of the time. They have that kind of connection. He can see over the defense. He can handle the ball. He has these skills. But then he has other games where it's just like he's turnover prone because, like you said, the handle gets a little sloppy. This whole team has a problem drawing fouls. Like Bam can do it consistently. This is one of their big issues. They don't get easy points. Tyler's number has gone up a little bit this year, but he's not physically strong enough to get those kind of star calls that other guys get. So you don't have a Shea. You don't have any of those kind of guys on this team to get those free throws. Wiggins has never really been that either. So Jimmy was that. And Niko's not at a stage now where he's going to get those calls consistently. But like
Mm-hmm.
one stat that jumped out to me, he just had his fifth dunk of the season. Fifth. Okay. That's, by the way, more than his first 2 years combined. But this is a guy who's 6'10". I'm not saying he's got elite hops, but like there are times we've talked about it, like, why are you laying it up like that? Just dunk it. And that's the thing with him where sometimes you see these flashes of his aggression, and I like his edge and I like his talent. But if he's going to be a big part of the future, and he's just 21, but if he's going to be a big part of the future, it's got to come out more consistently. But I also say, and this is part of what we've talked about with Bam over the years, some of this is on the coaching staff to put him in the role where he can flourish, because being a spot up shooter and standing in the corner ain't it. He can make those shots, but that's you're not maximizing him that way. And I just hope in the last 25 to 30 games they can kind of figure out who he should play with, because he's the type of the guys of the guy. We talk about him, Jaquez, Larsson. He's the one that I'm concerned about them trading him and him finding his
Oh my God.
way somewhere else, right? Like
We talked about that the summer of Dame, right? And I have something to reference back to. You remember the high that came after that Orlando game, and we saw
mm,
Niko at the small forward, Bam,
mm,
Khalil with
mm,
Tyler and Duncan, because you look at the numbers and metrics of the gravity, off ball gravity for Tyler
mm,
and Duncan, and then you look at the vertical spacing for Khalil and Bam, it's literally match perfect for Niko. Like a lot
mm,
of the actions they were running, like you could get those things off. Now, of course, you having Andrew Wiggins now, that changes a little bit, right? Andrew doesn't draw the same gravity that Duncan does, but he can shoot. He's shooting it almost 40% from three for the season. There's something different that you can see from that. We have not seen that. We have not seen
No.
the Tyler, Andrew, Niko, Bam, Khalil lineup yet. And it's and also too, like during these past couple of games, we haven't seen them run a lot of inverted pick and rolls or pick and rolls with Bam and
Mm.
Khalil. Bam and Khalil, Niko and Bam and things of that nature. And it's like I hope Spo sticks to his word, which I think he will, absolutely will. Coaches are going to sit down, especially now that the whole Jimmy situation is gone, as we move on to Khalil, that they kind of get some things worked out.
Yeah, I mean, and you talked about it when we saw the three of them together. I think we saw them with Hero and Rozier, which is not a lineup that
It didn't make sense.
that makes a lot of sense. All right, let's get to this guy. Jaime Jaquez today said this guy should be Rookie of the Year. I don't think that's going to happen. I just don't think he's going to have logged enough minutes. Although Jaron McCain getting hurt, Dalton Connect fading and getting traded. I mean, there have been some things that have led to this. I still think Castle in San Antonio, provided that he gets the consistent minutes, is likely going to walk away with this thing. But let me go through the minutes for Pelle Ware, averaging 19 minutes. He's now started 12 games. He's played 38. Really better to evaluate him in the starts, obviously. But overall, 54% from the field, includes 60% from two, 36% from three on 1.8 attempts. He is averaging 5.8 rebounds, zero point 0.8 assists, 8.6 points. Now, if I go to the per 36, a little bit of better indicator, he's averaging 11 rebounds per 36 minutes. So per 36 minutes, he's at 16.2 points and 11 rebounds. If I go overall to the per 36, just to give you an example here, total rebounds, Kevin Love averages 13.4. The next guy is Pelle Ware at 11 per 36 minutes. Bam's at 10.7. So actually, on a per 36-minute basis, he does out rebound Bam, and his scoring average of 16.2 points would rank him. Jimmy, I guess, still in the equation here, but Tyler's 24.2. Jimmy was at 20. Kevin Love is at 18.1, but again, his minutes have decreased. Bam at 17.7, and Ware is right there at 16.2, just ahead of Duncan at 16, Jovic at 15.6, and Rozier at 15.6, and Jaquez at 14.4. So, I mean, if you look at his numbers, they're pretty good for a rookie. But this ain't about numbers. I mean, this is about his progress
Right.
as he's gone forward here. They've not been a good offensive team all year, but they've been a particularly bad offensive team with him and with him and Bam in the starting lineup together. I'm not pinning that on him. They got to find a different way to play. But overall, I'll tell you what I've been impressed with, and then I'll let you close on him. The one thing I've been impressed with him is more. It's not something that's going to show up in the box score, so to speak. He moves the ball. And for the comparisons between him and Whiteside when they both came in,
I try to tell you.
Hassan was a black hole, okay? Like never came out, just very low IQ when it came to the way to play offensively. If Ware has something, he will be decisive. He's getting more decisive. But when he doesn't, the ball doesn't stick with him. That's an important quality for a young player who's just trying to fit in, make a name for himself in the league. So that has jumped out to me. Also, his effort has jumped out to me. The motor has been better than advertised. The screen setting has improved a little bit. The rebounding, I would like him to grab it with two hands more often. Okay, be a little stronger there. But again, the overall rebounding numbers are good. Um, what do you want to see him improve on? I know obviously you like him as a player and you did from the beginning. What do you want to see him improve on from what we've seen so far?
I think to me, what has happened to him is that he went from not really playing like that to then really playing a lot. And I think he was starting to hit a groove, especially after that San Antonio game. His rebounding had really improved. Like he was going up two hands up strong. And he was rebounding pretty real. If he had continued that, I'm sure his numbers would actually look a whole lot better. He's also dipped off on the shooting. He was shooting 40% from three. I think with a little bit more attempts for January, that has kind of dipped off. He's kind of hit a shooting slump. But I think more of that is just the rookie wall starting to hit him. And I think this break is coming right on time. he's going to have to improve with his defensive IQ, as far as just recognizing that you're tall. You're tall and you have the length to challenge shots. You don't have to jump for everything. Make the defense adjust. I mean, make the offense adjust to you. Excuse me, versus you jumping at everything. And we saw a little bit of that against the who did they last play? Dallas. Right. We saw a little bit of that Dallas, where Dallas did not have any serviceable big man on the court. The other thing that kind of really got under my skin, though, sounding a little Adelish, is that you are the biggest person on the court. Besides the Heat recognizing that, he should have like came out the gate with that fire of give me the damn ball. There's nobody scoring in the paint. I'm grabbing every rebound. And it looked like early season Khalil versus what we had seen before, like these past month or so, where he was just, being more aggressive with the rebounding, and things of that nature. It looked like he lost a little bit of his touch around the rim. So again, I'm kind of attributing it to kind of just rookie not playing this many games.
Well, Eternal, we saw that at the end of summer league. I mean, he played a lot of games in a short period of time, and by the end he was gassed. Now you're talking about a longer period of time. He goes from not playing a lot to playing a bunch, right? He's also dealing with, the roles have changed. The one thing that has jumped out to me though is Bam has played better since
Mm-hmm.
Ware's been put in the
Oh,
starting
Bam
role.
has been on a tear.
Right. And so that part of it is working.
Yeah.
They have to this is a two-part thing now. They got to figure out again, they got to keep developing Ware,
Mm-hmm.
playing through the mistakes. We talked about it. Probably going to lead to some losses, but there'll be some highs in here as well. That's part of it, but it's also about finding the other guys that fit
Mm-hmm.
with the two of them. And that is going to be leaning more into shooting and athleticism that they're going to need to find here. So we'll see where it goes. I got to close up the episode here, but Eternal, we'll get more into this. Check it out on the Discord, Off the Floor. That's our Discord server. We have these debates there all the time. Also, join us on Playback. Thanks to our sponsors, Water Cleanup of Florida, WCUFL.com. It's WCUFL.com. And also, Prize Picks. Use the code 5.